All right, thank you for joining us. Today is Thursday, November 14th. We're so happy you're here. This is such an important discussion, and it comes from our original presentation, which was done down at the NBDA Retailer Summit this past May in Bentonville, Arkansas. I'm thrilled to have Marley Blonsky, Executive Director of All Bodies on Bikes, join us for a really important webinar titled Meeting the Needs of America's Largest Demographic. Marley is a fat adventure cyclist, co-founder of Bodies on Bikes, as I said. She also is a podcast host, an advocate, and consultant. She's super passionate about size inclusion, and she does believe that everyone deserves full access to the life, awesome, inspiring-ness that bicycles bring to us. So Marley is really passionate about sharing her passion with others, especially retailers, and helping us figure out how we can meet the needs of America's largest demographic. I'm thrilled for the presentation today. Got raving reviews down at the summit, and really looking forward to the conversation. As we go along, if you have questions, you want to share your own insight, the chat is open. Please place any ideas, thoughts, or questions in the chat. We'll have a session at the conclusion of the presentation where we do moderate those questions. So without further ado, Marley, thanks for being here.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm really excited to get going with this. Just making sure I've got both the chat and the Q&A open. We will have time at the end, but if something comes up throughout and you feel free to put it in there. And if it makes sense, I will address it as we go, or I'll address it at the end. So thank you so much for the introduction, Heather. I'm coming to you today from sunny Bentonville, Arkansas. I unfortunately had knee surgery about a week ago, so I'm not able to get out and ride right now. But that's okay. We'll be back out as soon as we can. And I'm going to go ahead and dive right in. Going to confirm that folks can see my screen. Heather, you can see it? Great. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump into this. So as she mentioned, we did this presentation back in, I think it was May here in Bentonville, and the conversations that we had, that was more of a workshop style, as opposed to today is more of just a presentation style. It really informed a lot of the work that we are doing as All Bodies on Bikes. So I'm really excited to bring you this today, and I'm going to go ahead and dive right in. So All Bodies on Bikes is a nonprofit organization, and we operate with this mantra that all bodies are good bodies, all bikes are good bikes, and all rides should be celebrated. There is a little caveat on the all bikes are good bikes, as long as they're safe and working bicycles, especially for the person that's riding it, then all bikes are good bikes. But that really informs a lot of the work that we do. So before I get in too deeply, just a little bit of information about All Bodies on Bikes if you're not familiar with this, or just to learn a little bit more. So we were founded in 2021. Shimano made an incredible film by the same name. If you haven't seen it, I really encourage you to watch it. It's on YouTube. It's about 10 minutes long, but it really started this whole movement. Me and my co-founder, Kaylee Kornhauser, we've been riding bikes for a long time and not necessarily having our needs met as riders, both with clothing and equipment and community. And so we decided to do something about it. So we officially were founded in 2021. We started out just leading bike rides across the country, giving talks, doing webinars, things like that. And it has grown over the past 4 years into a thriving national nonprofit. We have 13 regional chapters that host group rides, events, and community engagements. We're getting ready to launch 5 more chapters this winter, so that'll be really exciting, with kind of a growth trajectory over the next couple of years that hopefully there will be an All Bodies on Bikes chapter in most areas. So we also have taken a team of non-traditional athletes to gravel events for the past 4 years. We've did 3 years at Steamboat Gravel, and this year we're transitioning to Mid-South Gravel. So if you're involved with that, come say hi to us there. And then we officially became a 501c3 nonprofit in 2023. So about to hit our 2-year anniversary there. A little more about us as an organization. Our mission, really crucial and keeps us grounded, but is to create a body size inclusive community, educate and change the industry, and ensure access to a safe and comfortable biking equipment. And then finally, to celebrate joyful movement on a bicycle. So a lot encompassed there, but at its core, we want to create a size-inclusive cycling community. How do we envision doing that? We envision a world where anyone, regardless of body size, weight, or perceived fitness level, can safely enjoy a bike ride in a way that is joyful to them. And I focus on that last part, the way that is joyful to them, because if people want to race, we want to make sure they're equipped on bikes that are going to do it for them. If they want to go ride with their family, same thing. If they want to commute to work, same thing, making sure that they've got equipment and clothing and the resources to make that happen. And that's where all of you come in. We went through a strategic planning process last year as an org and came up with 3 key goals that we're working on. The first is to build a joyful cycling community, and we do that through our rides, through our local chapters, through our programming. The second is to create a cultural shift in cycling, and I'm going to talk more about this in just a second. And the third is to sustain our efforts. As a nonprofit, we're always fundraising. We actually have our fall fundraiser going on right now. If you go to allbodiesonbikes.com, we would love a donation. I'm not going to belabor that point, but we are a nonprofit and would love any support you can give. But back to creating the cultural shift in cycling, we've got a couple strategies that help us reach that goal, which this is one of those. So we want to work with the industry. We are a member of the NBDA, but we want to work with the industry to expand physical equipment options for larger riders. So making sure that we're having those conversations about posting weight limits, making sure that things are tested and engineered for bigger weight limits, things like that. So that's one part of our work. The second strategy is to continue to work with the cycling industry to change the culture. And that's a big part of our conversation today that we'll get into. The third is to grow our online support systems. We have a partnership with, oh my God, now I'm blanking on the name of it, but they help design websites for bike shops, and they have a resource page for biking for bigger bodies. So this is a tool that could be available to you if you are a bike shop. And I'm sorry, I'm not explaining this well, and I didn't think about it. But if you have questions about that, let me know at the end. Yes, exactly, with Workstand. Thank you so much. We have a partnership with Workstand. As part of their resource library, we have a page that can be added to your website for biking for bigger bodies. And happy to give more information about that. And then finally, we want to continue to be a resource for the cycling community. So let's get into it. So why does size inclusion matter to cycling? Obviously, it's a good thing to do. But at the end of the day, 74% of Americans live in a bigger body. What does that mean technically? It's a stat from the Centers for Disease Control that 74% of Americans are either overweight or obese, which I don't like that language. It gets very medicalized. So we like to use the terminology living in a bigger body. You heard Heather describe me as fat. I self-describe as a fat person, but I don't like to use that language for other people because it is such a charged word. But at the end of the day, 3 out of every 4 people in the US lives in a bigger body. And so it really is America's largest demographic. It goes across genders, it goes across race, it goes across income levels. And so it's a huge opportunity for us to welcome this population and to meet their needs. And at the end of the day, I always feel gross saying this, but to make money. If we're not providing service or products for people, they're not going to spend money with us. But if we are, they will hopefully be our customers. We also know that the benefits of cycling, obviously there's the physical benefits, and this is for everybody, not just people in larger bodies, but specifically for people in larger bodies. We know that cycling is really good for people with joint issues. We know that it's good for people with mobility issues. There's lots of ways to adapt cycling, whether that's e-bikes, trikes, recumbent bikes, etc., to work with people of all different body sizes. And then just the host of other benefits that we all know about, the emotional well-being, the mental health, healthier communities when families are riding together, less people in cars, all of those things, and ensuring that these benefits are accessible to people in bigger bodies. So how do we make cycling accessible to riders of all sizes? And that's really going to be the bulk of the conversation today. We know that there are unique needs of larger body riders, and here's some of the challenges. We're going to spend a little bit of time digging into these challenges, and then I'm going to spend some time going over some solutions that y'all can do. So there's some common barriers to entry. There's the stigma of being a bigger bodied person, and we'll get into that a little bit with some firsthand anecdotes. There's lack of size inclusive products. We'll talk about that. And then there's bike fit issues for people, especially in as you get into bigger body on the bigger end of the spectrum. And then there's also some mental and emotional challenges. So past experience in bike shops. And then there's also the varying motivation of people for why they want to get into cycling. So here's some anecdotes that people send us emails all the time. They send us these incredible, very heartfelt messages, either of frustration or joy, or just asking for advice. So here's one. I weighed 325 pounds and would love to ride with my kids, but I'm afraid to go into my local bike shop to find a bike. I fear they won't take me seriously or have a bike that will work for me. So very real concern there. Here's another one. I went to my local shop to find a new gravel bike and wasn't taken seriously. How can I find a shop that will respect me as a bigger bodied woman? And I've even had that experience myself. You walk into a shop and you look a certain way and they automatically, the salesperson assumes that you're there for a hybrid or you're there for a specific thing instead of asking questions. And we'll get into some of those techniques later for how you can address things like that to make sure that your shop is a good resource for people regardless of their body size. And then just one last one. I'm just getting into mountain biking, and my bike shop asked me how much I weighed, and I was nervous to tell them for fear of judgment. Why did they need to know? It's almost silly that they asked us, and instead of getting this education at the bike shop. But again, these are very real experiences. So that kind of addresses some of the stigma, some of the challenges that people have. Um, Another challenge for people in bigger bodies is a lack of size inclusive products. And I know that this does not come down to the individual retailer most of the time. It's an industry-wide issue. There are some brands that are getting better at it. And that's a lot of the work that we're doing is to have those conversations to show the marketplace need. But we know that most cycling brands, if we're lucky, they go up to a double XL. There are some specialized retailers online. I'm thinking Fat Lad at the Back, Velotech, Champion System that go up to like 5 or 6X. But the big ones, the Pearl Izumi, Rafa, some of those brands, they top out at fairly small sizes. We also know that sizing is inconsistent and can be based on a very small body type built around bike racers. And so even if they do make a bigger size, it might not actually reflect the reality and translate over to a bigger body. Another issue on this, and this is something that I've learned, especially since moving to Bentonville, where there's so much mountain biking, is that protective gear. So knee pads, elbow pads, chest pads, those don't come in very big sizes either. And so folks are often going without some of that essential technical gear. Some of the bike fit challenges that bigger bodies experience, a range of challenges with range of motion. They might not have the mobility to get on and off in a traditional way. When they pedal, their knees, I say my knees do this too, come into the belly and kind of change the way that your body looks and moves on a bicycle. A lot of folks in bigger bodies prefer a more upright position. And so making sure that we are getting them onto bicycles that don't dump all of their weight into their wrists and their hands and their shoulders. And so finding bikes that fit well for different bodies at different sizes and weights and mobility levels. And then this is where the bulk of things are at. I don't want to say I glossed over it, but I'm sure you're all familiar with a lot of those challenges. You see them in your shops all the time. You see them when you see people riding a bike and like, oh, that doesn't look very comfortable. I wonder if there's something different that could be done. And so my hope now is to go through some actual tangible things that you can do in your environment. A lot of this is geared towards local bike shops. But if you are a brand owner or somebody else, I feel like these could also be relevant. So we're going to dive into each of these and let's start right there. So the first thing that you can do, and this goes across body sizes, but is to create an inclusive environment in your place of business. This should all go without saying. It should be pretty obvious, but you'd be surprised. The first thing is to use welcoming language. So back to my story of walking into a bike shop and being assumed that I was there to buy like a hybrid bicycle. Not that there's anything wrong with hybrids, but it's just to use welcoming languages. So avoid assumptions or value-laden terms around body size. I encourage you, let the customer lead the conversation. If they start talking about their motivations for cycling, if they want to lose weight, feel free to go with it, but I wouldn't automatically assume that somebody is riding a bike to lose weight. And so don't lead with that as part of the conversation. You'll probably going to upset some folks there. And train your staff to approach all customers in a way that prioritizes comfort, respect, and understanding. Regardless of what they're in there for, leading with comfort, respect, and understanding will get you a long ways. Couple other things you can do to create that inclusive environment. You can display size inclusive and diverse marketing images. So depending on where you're getting your images from, think about, working with us. We would love to provide you some photos of riders in bigger bodies to go in your marketing materials. People of different ages, people on different types of bikes. Who you show in your marketing is going to be reflected in the customers that show up to your place of business. If possible, include mannequins, posters, and signage that reflect body diversity. So again, body size, of course, but also age, gender, race, all of those things will go a long way. And then don't forget about social media. Ensure that your social media, so if you're taking pictures at events or promoting events, ensuring that your marketing there reflects body diversity. The next thing you can do is in your inventory and product offerings. So all of these, I'm going to start with a caveat of like, I know inventory is a challenge. I know that you all have very limited square footage. And so I fully recognize that as a challenge. But these are my suggestions to you, and take them with a grain of salt and apply them to your business as appropriate. So the first is to stock bikes that are well suited for higher weight capacities. Obviously, the first part there is learning which bikes are good for higher weight capacities, which can lead you down quite the rabbit hole. But I think the more of us that are having these conversations about weight limits, the more common those conversations will be, and the easier it will be to find that information. Right now, depending on the brand, it can be quite the search to find the weight limits, but a lot of them are getting better at this. I kind of already talked about this, but make sure that you know your product's weight limits. Make it a standard part of ideally it would be included on the hang tag or on the geometry spec sheet. I realize that's like a pie in the sky dream of mine, but know what the weight limits are of your products. And then carry brands and models that offer reinforced frames, wide saddles, and sturdy wheels, especially if bigger bodies are part of your normal demographic, or this is a demographic that you're trying to target. Having those things in store will definitely help you instead of having to special order things and have that customer come back in. So. Other things you can do on that is offer size inclusive apparel in higher sizes. One suggestion here, I know it's again not possible to carry a full size run in every SKU, but to have a size run that folks can try on in store and then they can order it through you. This is especially helpful for some of those higher price items, rain jackets, rain pants, winter jackets. If you can get the full size range that people can at least try on in the store, it makes it a lot easier to bite the bullet and purchase that item. And then also to provide accessories for larger bodies. And I kind of already talked about this, but wider saddles, pedal extenders, and making sure that your mechanic and fit team knows about Q factor and pedal extenders and things that you can do to accommodate different size bodies. And then also sturdy pedals. Breaking pedals is a very common thing, especially for people in bigger bodies. And so making sure that people are on sturdy equipment when they first go out the door with their bike is going to help alleviate some of those pain points for heavier riders. One of the biggest things you can do is to provide support with sizing and fit for people in bigger bodies. So the first thing is to educate your staff on adapting fit for bigger bodied riders. So different things that you can do. So raising handlebars, seat adjustments, widening the Q factor, things like that. Making sure that your staff is just aware of those relatively simple changes that can be made will go a long way. I already talked about this, but to highlight and stock specialized gear to accommodate unique fitting, unique fitting needs. Those things like riser bars, adjustable saddles, if that is something that you think would sell well, having those so you could at least educate your customer on them is really helpful. And then when you are doing a bike fit or trying to make somebody more comfortable on their bicycle, making sure that you understand their motivations for riding, and fit them accordingly. You know, if somebody is training to ride a 60-mile bike MS, you're going to fit them on a bike differently than somebody who just wants to ride to the grocery store, maybe once or twice a week, or just ride leisurely. So having that conversation with the customer about, you know, why they want to ride bikes, that sort of thing. So the next thing is education and training for your staff members. So provide regular training on size inclusion and sensitivity to help staff feel prepared. A couple ways that you can do this. I know it's kind of a challenging thing. You can always show them this webinar. There's a lot of cute films out there. I'm not to toot my own horn, but I'm in a couple of them. And just regularly having those conversations, encouraging your staff to watch the All Bodies on Bikes film, can go a long ways. Again, it's like a 10-minute film, and just normalizing the conversation and normalizing talking about meeting different customers' needs. And then making sure your staff are knowledgeable about which bikes, equipment, and customizations are best for bigger riders. So you as the store owner or the manager might know all this information, but making sure your sales team is aware of it as well. And then finally, this shouldn't go too bad without saying, or too far without saying. I've left a lot of time for Q&A at the end, but leading with customer service excellence. You know, prioritize listening to your customers without judgment. And then a big thing is to offer follow-up for consultations on bike adjustments, comfort assessments, and potential upgrades. So once you send that customer out the door and you've got all these things taken care of, making sure that they know that they can trust you and come back to you if any issues arise. I said that was the last thing. It's not the last thing. Another big thing you can do is community engagement. So, you know, if you have a shop ride, making sure that it's actually an inclusive ride. And if folks have questions about that, I'm happy to answer, to talk about that, you know, what actually makes a ride inclusive. But making sure that they're size inclusive, that they're no drop. And this might be in addition to, you know, if you've got a weekly training ride or you've got a weekly workout ride, this would be an additional ride in terms of that. You know, partner with organizations like us. We would love to reach out to you and have a one-on-one conversation or come in and say hi. You know, to build relationships with larger bodied cyclists in your community. You know, we would love to help out with that, because getting people in the door is obviously going to help foster those relationships. So I just went through 6 different buckets of things that you can do. You know, that went a lot faster than I was anticipating. So we have a lot of time now for Q&A. And I see a couple questions coming into the cycling, or the questions. So please continue to put those in there. And I'm going to start answering them. So the first question from Spin Zone Cycling is a really great question. They say, so you have a bigger bodied customer and they want a lightweight road bike. Most bikes limit out at 200 to 225 pounds. Believe me, I know. What brand do you suggest? I have to be transparent here and say that I am a sponsored rider for Cannondale. And so I want to make that brand relationship known. That being said, Cannondale is a great option. They top out at, I think, 330 on most of their bikes. Another thing you can talk with your customer about is frame material. you know, explaining that while carbon might be the most lightweight, it might have some prohibitive weight limits. So encouraging them to get on, I mean, if they've got the money for a lightweight road bike, springing for titanium, springing for a custom road bike. I'm trying to think about other brands that have great weight limits. I feel like Specialized does pretty decent, up to like 300 pounds. But it might just be a matter of having that conversation with the customer and saying, hey, these weight limits aren't going to work for you and you're just going to run into issues down the road. Let's find one that does. I really need to do more research on the brands and their weight limits. I've been looking more at mountain bikes lately, and so I apologize. I don't have a ton of brands off the top of my head for road biking. When I had this conversation with Cervelo, because Cervelo does not publish weight limits, they said it's something that they're actually going to start doing. So it is something that a lot of these brands are aware of, and they want to be better about it because 200 to 225 pounds just isn't that much. So this next question, we've got a bigger body, wants that cool road bike with a low spoke count. How to approach the area of another $650 to $1,000 for a higher spoke count wheels? That is a really good question. And it's just a matter of having the conversation and saying, hey, these wheels are not going to work for you. I would encourage you, you know, if you're able to get creative with it, of, you know, maybe they can trade the wheels back into you for a discount on that custom wheel build. If that customer is really going for that high end, it's a higher spoke count wheel build is going to make a world of difference in their cycling. And it's just an unfortunate fact of the matter. But I might even point them towards like building a bike up from a frame and component set, and then going from there. So other wheels you can look at are Bird. If you've heard of BERD, they make this kind of nylon spoke. It's really cool, has a really high weight limit. Again, not cheap at all. Yeah. Next question from Neil, is there a source to look up what products really are heavy duty? Unfortunately not, and that's something that we are working on. We do have a resource section on our website, so if you go to allbodiesonbikes.com and then resources, we have some resources listed there, including some brands. We tend to point folks towards steel bikes. Surly is a big fan of, or we're a big fan of Surly, All City, Salsa, although a lot of Salsa is aluminum nowadays, but they've got some strong welds there. But we're really just trying to figure out what is reputable nowadays and what isn't, especially with so many kind of fly-by-night bike companies coming into the market.
Marley, you are just fantastic. So much knowledge here, so many things we can think about as retailers to best position ourselves. Some great questions that Mike put in from Spin Zone and Neil as well. Anyone else have questions while we have Marley with us?
I'm going to go ahead and click the page. If you think of something later, there's my email address that goes to me directly. I realize I ran through the presentation really quickly, was a little bit nervous there, but also happy to help brainstorm with you or help find the right product. If you've got that customer who's really looking for something and you're not finding it, happy to work one-on-one.
Yeah, Marley, we have another question that came in from Neil. Do you see that there? Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So broken pedals are a common common problem. What other parts often fail? Wheels and spokes. So I should say spokes is really what it is. It's not usually the rim, but it's usually spokes. Another thing that happens is, and this is just a wear and tear issue, but educating customers that if they're heavier, depending on how much they're riding, they're gonna go through their brake pads more quickly. So educating them that, hey, this is no big deal. This is a consumable part. And teaching them, I mean, obviously we want them to come in for service because that's where we make our money. But just educating them that, hey, it's no big deal. But this is something you need to check regularly on your bike. Other places people have issues is sometimes with saddles. The saddle rails are often not that strong and they can break there. So that can be a good thing to check, is making sure that somebody is on an appropriate saddle for their weight. And that can also, saddles are a huge challenge for people in bigger bodies. There's always this assumption that, the wide, cushy gel saddle is like what you need to ride if you have a bigger body. And that might work for some folks, especially the more leisurely folks. But if you're getting into the more endurance, gravel, road riding, I always try and steer people towards getting a saddle fit. So getting their sit bones measured, because your sit bones don't necessarily get bigger as your body size gets bigger. That's your skeleton, and then your weight and muscles are on top of that. So encouraging people to get a saddle that fits their skeletal structure and not necessarily their body size. And that can be a little bit of a challenging conversation because we all think that, oh, I have a big butt, I need a big saddle. So that's a myth that I'm constantly dispelling on my social media.
I love that. Thank you for that tidbit there.
Yeah.
Great questions that have come in. Well, Marley, I appreciate you sharing your contact information and sharing your time. This presentation is really insightful because it gets us thinking about the things that we don't often think about, and I'm really glad that you were able to share this with us today. Attendees, if you do have additional questions, please do reach out to Marley. If you're watching this in the recording, thank you for being here. I hope you found the content engaging. And as well, if you have questions, reach out to Marley at any time. Don't forget to visit the All Bodies on Bikes website. As Marley said, they are run by donations, and appreciate any support we can pass along. Marley, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, and good job to everybody out there. I know what you do is hard, and grateful for you tuning in to learn about this. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Have a nice afternoon.